My family stole everything. So I sued them and cut them off forever. Okay, Reddit. Buckle up. Because you're about to hear a story so twisted, so infuriating, that it still makes my blood boil just thinking about it. I always felt like an afterthought in my own family, living in the long, dark shadow of my sister, Lily. Our house was a constant cacophony of noise, always the latest pop song blaring, while I preferred the quiet solitude of a book or scribbling in my notebook. Birthdays and holidays were just a flashing neon sign pointing out how different we were. Lily would rip through her presents, squealing over the latest trendy clothes or gadgets, while I quietly tucked away any money I received. "What are you saving for this time, Rach?" Dad would ask, a sliver of pride in his voice that never quite reached his eyes. "A laptop for studying. The library computers are always full." They never seemed to understand why I didn't crave the things Lily did. Lily, on the other hand, was a tornado of ever-changing styles and demands. "Mom, did you see the new iPhone? Everyone at school has one. I need it." And just like that, no questions asked, she'd have it. I remember the day I finally saved enough and bought my own laptop. I walked in for dinner, practically bursting with pride. "Look, I finally got it," I announced. Mom barely glanced up from her plate. And instantly, the conversation shifted. Lily launched into a detailed description of her latest shopping spree, completely eclipsing my moment. Lily was the sun, and I was just some distant planet, quietly orbiting. While Lily experimented with every wild hairstyle and fashion trend imaginable, I stuck to my practical ponytail and comfortable jeans. The library became my sanctuary, a quiet haven where I could focus on my goals without constant distractions. When college applications came around, I threw myself into them with every ounce of determination I possessed. Countless nights were spent perfecting my essays, researching scholarships, and studying for entrance exams. The day I received my acceptance letter and a full scholarship was one of the proudest moments of my life. I practically ran into the kitchen, waving the letter. "Mom, Dad, I got in. Full ride." Mom looked up from helping Lily with her makeup. Dad glanced over his newspaper. "Good job, Rachel. We expected nothing less." Their lukewarm response stung. But honestly, I was used to it. This was my ticket out, my chance to finally prove myself. But then Lily brought home her report card, a disaster of mediocre grades. And instead of disappointment, they rallied around her. "Oh, sweetie, don't worry about it. College isn't for everyone." Mom cooed. Dad nodded in agreement. "You'll find your path." I couldn't believe my ears. "Are you kidding me?" She barely passed. Mom shot me a look sharp enough to cut diamonds. "Rachel, don't be cruel. Your sister has other gifts." I bit my tongue, retreated to my room once again. It was painfully clear that no matter what I achieved, Lily would always be the favorite. College was a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued hard work and ambition. I dove into my studies, determined to make the most of this opportunity. One day during my sophomore year, I got a call from home. It was Lily. "I'm thinking of taking some beauty courses," she announced. "Mom and Dad think it's a great idea." I wanted to tell her about the fascinating research project I was working on, but I knew she wouldn't care. Hanging up, I felt a cocktail of frustration and renewed determination. I was on my own path, and I would make it count. Years flew by. Lily flitted from one beauty course to another, never finishing anything, while I graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious company before the ink was even dry on my diploma. Moving into my own apartment was bittersweet. Unpacking my meager belongings, I couldn't help but reflect on how different my life was from Lily's. She was still living at home, being pampered by our parents, while I was standing on my own 2 feet, ready to conquer the world. My first months at work were brutal. I worked harder and longer than anyone else, desperate to prove myself. And it paid off. Within a year, I was promoted to team leader. I called home to share the news. Mom answered, "Oh, that's nice, Rachel. But guess what? Lily met the most wonderful boy. He comes from such a good family." We're all so excited. I hung up feeling deflated, but also more resolved than ever. If my family couldn't appreciate my achievements, fine, I'd keep proving them wrong. Weekends became just another opportunity to get ahead. My dedication paid off. Another promotion, then another. Before I knew it, I was head of the department, the youngest in the company's history. Mr. Thompson, the owner, called me into his office one day. "Rachel, your work has been exceptional. We've never had someone rise through the ranks so quickly." I beamed with pride. "Thank you, sir. I love what I do." He smiled. "That's why I want to offer you something special. We have a program for our top employees. A chance to buy an apartment at a significant discount. You've more than earned it." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and planning. Finally getting the keys felt like a dream. I decided to throw a housewarming party. A chance to celebrate my success with the people who truly mattered. I didn't have much furniture, so I bought some inexpensive plastic tables and chairs. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The day of the party arrived. My colleagues showed up first, bearing gifts and offering warm congratulations. Then they arrived. Mom, Dad, and Lily swept in like a whirlwind. I immediately noticed Lily's eyes darting around, taking in the modest furnishings with barely concealed contempt. I also noticed a pattern. Every time one of my colleagues tried to congratulate me or mention my accomplishments, my parents would swiftly change the subject to Lily. "Oh, that reminds me," Mom would say, cutting off my coworker mid-sentence. "Did Rachel tell you about Lily's latest modeling gig?" Dad would chime in. "Yes. Lily was born for the spotlight. Such natural talent." I saw the confused and slightly horrified looks on my colleagues' faces. Finally, mercifully, my family left. As soon as the door closed behind them, my coworker Sarah turned to me. "Rachel, what the hell was that?" I shrugged, trying to play it off. "Oh, you know, that's just how they are." Another colleague, Mark, shook his head. "No, Rachel, that's not normal. Are you okay? Do you need help?" I felt a lump forming in my throat. "I'm used to it. Who wants another drink?" I was determined not to let them see how much my family's behavior had affected me. After the housewarming fiasco, I threw myself back into work with renewed vigor. Months flew by, and slowly but surely, I transformed my apartment into a space that truly felt like home. Every piece of furniture, every splash of color on the walls, was a testament to my hard work and independence. One sunny Saturday, I decided to treat myself to something I'd been eyeing for a while, a car. Nothing flashy, just a reliable sedan that would get me from point A to point B. Driving it home, I felt a surge of pride. This was mine, bought with my own money, a symbol of my success. I hadn't planned on telling my family, but news travels fast. The phone rang that evening. "I heard you bought a car." "That's nice," Mom said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. I felt my hackles rise. "What do you mean?" "Well, the main task of a woman is to get married properly." "Silly. Find a man who will support you and give you everything you need. Why work yourself to the bone when you could have it all handed to you?" Was she serious? "I'm proud of what I've accomplished." "Oh, Rachel, you're so naive." Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the phone, a mix of anger and disbelief swirling in my gut. How could we see the world so differently? A few months later, I got my answer. Lily called, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Rachel, You'll never guess what happened. I'm getting married. His name is Robert. He's absolutely loaded. Rach. His parents are paying for the whole wedding. I felt a strange hollowness in my chest. This was her version of success. The day of the wedding arrived all too soon. I stood in the grand hall, feeling out of place among the glittering guests. Lily was radiant in her designer gown, and our parents couldn't stop gushing over her. As I sipped my champagne, the thought struck me. Have they ever looked at me with such pride? Have they ever been this happy for my accomplishments? I felt more and more like an outsider. They were charming guests and basking in the attention, introducing themselves as the parents of the bride. I couldn't help but wonder, have I made the right choices? Had I chosen the harder path? But then I thought about my job, my achievements, the sense of pride I felt every time I accomplished something on my own. I decided. My path might be harder, but it was mine. And that made all the difference. The wedding became an unwelcome interruption, and every conversation was the same. Rachel, darling, you'll never believe what Lily's been up to. I'd brace myself as she launched into another tale of Lily's fabulous new life. She's been invited to the most exclusive gatherings. Can you believe it? High society. One day, after a particularly trying call, I couldn't hold back anymore. Mom, that's great for Lily. But don't you want to know what's going on in my life? Oh, honey, she sighed. But you really should learn from your sister. Be more beautiful. Get things easily. Why work all day for pennies when you could have it all? A few weeks later, an invitation arrived. Lily and Robert were having a housewarming party for their new luxury apartment. A gift from his parents. Of course. The night of the party, I stood outside their building feeling small. I smoothed down my simple dress and took a deep breath before heading in. The apartment was stunning. Every surface gleamed. Every piece of furniture looked like it cost more than my yearly salary. My parents were already there, fussing over every detail. I tried to blend into the background, but Lily spotted me. She sauntered over, champagne flute in hand. Rachel, so glad you could make it. I hope you're taking notes. This is how a housewarming should be done. None of that plastic furniture and disposable dish nonsense like at your place. I felt my cheeks burn, but she was already moving on. The weeks that followed were a parade of Lily's extravagance. She seemed to buy everything in sight, always choosing the most expensive option. Then came the car. I was leaving work one evening when a sleek sports car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing Lily's smug face. Just a little gift from Robert. Thought I'd take it for a spin. I tried to remain unremarkable. It's very nice. Lily? She followed my gaze and smirked. Oh, Rachel. Always settling for less. You'll always be working for others while I live the good life. 2 years flew by in a blur of spreadsheets, meetings, and promotions. While I climbed the corporate ladder, Lily seemed content to climb from one shopping spree to the next. It was a regular Tuesday when my world tilted on its axis. Mom called, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. Rachel. Robert. He left her. I was stunned. What happened? He said she was too shallow, too focused on spending his money. Called her stupid. Can you believe it? I felt a mix of emotions, shock, concern, and, if I'm being honest, a tiny flicker of vindication. I squashed it down immediately. Ashamed of myself. I'm coming over, I said, already grabbing my keys. When I arrived at my parents' house, it was like walking into a war zone. Lily was a wreck, mascara streaking down her face, her designer clothes torn. She was throwing anything she could get her hands on, picture frames, cushions. He can't do this to me, she shrieked. I'm Lily. I'm beautiful. I'm perfect. Mom and Dad fluttered around her, trying to calm her down. Sweetie, please. Mom pleaded. We'll figure this out. Dad chimed in frantically. Of course. Princess. Anything you want. I stood there watching the scene unfold, feeling like I was in some bizarre alternate reality. This couldn't be happening. As the days turned into weeks, Lily's behavior spiraled. She'd cry hysterically, then scream, then demand expensive gifts to make herself feel better. One evening, after a particularly bad episode, I couldn't hold my tongue anymore. Maybe, I said cautiously, Lily should consider getting a job. It might help her appreciate the value of money and give her something to focus on besides all this. The room went dead silent. Then all hell broke loose. Lily's face contorted in rage. A job? Like you. Slaving away day after day like some peasant. She burst into tears and ran upstairs, slamming her door so hard the house shook. Mom and Dad rounded on me. How dare you? Mom hissed. Your sister is going through a terrible time, and you suggest she lower herself to your level. But I didn't mean. Get out, Dad said, his voice cold. Get out of this house right now. Mom pointed to the door. Out. And don't come back until you can be supportive of your sister. In a daze, I grabbed my purse and left. As I walked into my apartment, my sanctuary, I felt a strange mix of emotions: sadness at being rejected by my family, anger at their blindness to Lily's faults, but also a sense of relief. For the first time, I saw clearly how toxic my family dynamic had been all these years. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Just days after the blowout with my family, I received news that left me speechless. I'd won a company contest, a 4-month around-the-world cruise. In a moment of weakness, or perhaps courage, I called my parents. Maybe this good news would bridge the gap between us. Mom, Dad, you won't believe it. I won a cruise around the world. The silence on the other end was deafening. Rachel, how can you be so selfish? Your sister is going through a terrible time, and you're bragging about vacations. I felt like I'd been slapped. I'm not bragging. I just thought. Mom interrupted. If you had any decency, you'd give that ticket to Lily. Something snapped inside me. Years of pent-up frustration came pouring out. No, I said firmly. I'm not giving it up because Lily made poor life choices. I'm going. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. I packed my bags, put my affairs in order, and on the day of departure, I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The cruise was everything I dreamed of and more. I watched sunsets in the Mediterranean, explored the bustling streets of Hong Kong. For 4 glorious months, I was just Rachel, not the responsible older sister, not the family disappointment. But all good things must come to an end. I turned on my phone, bracing myself for the barrage of messages. Surprisingly, there were only a few missed calls from my parents. Feeling lighter than I had in years, I headed home. I heard noises inside my apartment. My heart raced. Had someone broken in? Cautiously, I opened the door and came face to face with Lily, surrounded by shopping bags and empty takeout containers. What are you doing here? I demanded, stunned by her sudden appearance. Oh, you're back. Finally. How did you get in here? Lily rolled her eyes. Don't be dense, Rachel. I used the spare key you gave Mom and Dad. I needed a change of scenery. Everything at home reminded me of. You know. I stood there staring at Lily, trying to process everything. This was too much. I'm going to the store, I muttered, grabbing my car keys and heading for the door. But when I reached the parking lot, my car was nowhere to be seen. Panic rising, I called my parents. Mom answered, her voice sickly sweet. Rachel, how was your trip? Where's my car? I demanded, cutting to the chase. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Lily needed cheering up, Mom explained. as if it was the most natural thing in the world. We used the money to take her shopping. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That was my car. You had no right. Now. Rachel. We're family. Don't be so selfish. Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration, resentment, and anger came pouring out. Selfish. You steal my car. Invade my home. And I'm selfish. I want my money back. Back now. They called me heartless. And grateful. A disappointment. The words stung. But for the first time, they didn't break me. Oblivious to the storm raging inside me, Lily spoke up. This is ridiculous, Rachel. Can't you see I need help? Get out. I said, my voice quiet but firm. What? She said, taken aback and thinking I was not serious. Get out now. She tried to argue, to manipulate me like she always had. But I stood firm. For once in my life, I was putting myself first. The next day, I hired a lawyer and sued my parents for the value of the car. They were furious, threatening to disown me, to cut me out of their will. But I stood my ground. The case went to court. It was a grueling process, laying out years of emotional manipulation and financial abuse for strangers to judge. But in the end, the judge ruled in my favor. My parents were forced to sell their house to repay me. They moved into a small apartment, all the while painting me as the villain who had ruined their lives. But for once, their words couldn't touch me. As I drove my new car home from the dealership, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. Free from expectations. Free from manipulation. Free to be myself. I cut off all contact with my family. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. There were moments of doubt, moments of loneliness, but slowly I began to build a life on my own terms. I threw myself into my work, rising quickly through the ranks. I made new friends. Friends who loved me for me, not for what I could do for them. I learned new skills. I found hobbies that brought me joy. And most importantly, I learned to love myself, to appreciate my strength, my determination. Now, as I sit in my office, looking out over the city, I can't help but smile. It wasn't easy, but it was mine, built brick by brick, decision by decision, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So, Reddit, after hearing all of that, do you think I handled the situation correctly? Should I have tried harder to mend fences with my family? Or was cutting them off the only way to truly break free and find my own happiness? I'm genuinely curious to hear your opinions on whether suing my parents was too extreme, or if it was a necessary step to reclaim my life and protect myself from further manipulation. And what would you have done in my shoes, given the same circumstances and emotional baggage that I carried for so many years?